Okay, ladies and gentlemen, or as they say on airplanes in India nowadays, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk with Jijith Nadumuri Ravi, who is a scientist and a self-taught historian, and who in history has actually made his mark very much by writing about the history of the Rigveda, the Ramayana, and the Mahabharata. So his first book about Indian history was called Rivers of Rigveda. It's still only 2 years old, I think. And could you maybe summarize what the important results are?
So the book Rivers of Rigveda is primarily focusing on the geography of the Rigveda. But basically, when you talk about the geography of Rigveda, most of the elements of the geography is the rivers themselves, like around 32 unique rivers and around 40 plus river names, hydronyms that are present. And in terms of the number of place names, they are not very much available in the Rigveda. With few places like Manusha, which are related to Manu, and Ilaspada related to Manu's daughter Ila, and a few others like Pastyavadi, which is identified as today's Takshashila. So compared to that, place names, the rivers, all the main element of the geography of Rigveda is primarily the rivers, and the rivers define the entire span of the Rigvedic geography. And some of the interesting results coming out of it is, like if you look at analyze the 32 rivers, they span from the western Uttar Pradesh as the easternmost side to eastern Afghanistan as the westernmost side, and on the north side up to Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir region, and in the south up to the Sindh, that is Sindh province of Pakistan. So that entire geography that is defined as by the 32 rivers in Rigveda perfectly match with the Harappan civilization geography, which is also exactly like this. Like western Uttar Pradesh is the easternmost part of the Harappan cities or settlements, and eastern Afghanistan is the westernmost part. Kashmir, the sites in Kashmir, that is the easternmost. Of course, there is one outpost, that is Short Kai, which is a little more northern into the places where you can get the lapis lazuli, that special jewel. So that is a Harappan outpost, and on the southern side it is exactly the Sindh province of Pakistan, and of course with some extension into the Gujarat, and some small little amount of sites in Narmada, the mouth of Narmada, and slightly Damiabad, which is in the northern Maharashtra, slightly to the south of Narmada. So if you can look at 99%, the Rigvedic geography and the Harappan geography is in perfect match. And of course, chronologically, if you follow the median chronology of Srikantalagiri, which with me, whatever chronology I have, it is only some 400 years of difference, exactly matches with the chronology of the early, middle, and late Harappan culture. So both in chronology as well as in geography, there is a perfect match. So this is one of the important summary of my book, Rivers of Rigveda.
Yes, well, you mentioned Srikantalagiri. He, could not but be satisfied with a large part of your book. But there are a few things that he strongly disagreed with. The identification of one particular river, the Sarayu, which appears at different places. That name was taken along.
Mm-hmm.
But the part that really interests me is about the location of the solar dynasty. The traditional version is that the solar dynasty started in Uttar Pradesh, probably Ayodhya, but somewhere close. And so that's where Ila was born, and then she became the ancestress some scion of hers, Nahusha, moved to the west. And so there started the Pandava tribe, the Vedas and all that. Now, and the attractiveness of this is that it also brings in the fact of the Ganga culture, of which I don't know much and most people don't know much. But so the idea that there already was some center of civilization rather to the east of the Saraswati Basin and the Yamuna Basin is, a novel idea among Western archaeologists, but actually not so strange when you know the Indian mythological accounts. But so you dissent from that, you say, well, even Manu and Ila are located within the broader Saraswati area, and some of their descendants moved east.
Yeah.
So please explain that.
Yeah, yes. What the main difference of my analysis is that I completely follow the what you call the gradient, the chronological gradient of the archaeological site. So I bring in the archaeological element into the study of Rigveda.
Yeah.
Firstly, mainly because of the geographical coherence. So then I took the archaeology very seriously, and of course I got support from the literature that the oldest place names, I mentioned the place names itself are very rare mentioned in the Rigveda, but Rigvedic rishis find it very important to mention Manusha, that is associated with Manu, and Manu's daughter Ila, the place name Ilaspada associated with Ila, that both locations are in the heartland, that is in the Haryana, in the what we call as Kurukshetra today. But in the Rigvedic period, Kuru was not there. He was very late, so that place is called Varaprithivya. Of course, a kind of adjective, but it is like in the absence of any noun, it is Varaprithivya is the name of the Kuru, whatever later became the Kurukshetra or the northern Haryana. So you have two ancient figures, Manu and Ila, and the place names associated with the two ancient figures, Manu and Ila, right inside this northern Haryana. So in that light, when you look at the archaeology, the chronologically, the oldest site archaeological excavation in Varanasi or Kashi, it is around close to 2000 BC. In fact, lesser than 2000 BC, but more or less 2000 BC, etc. And this Allahabad, Prayagraj, again, it is whatever date currently available is between 1800 BC to 2000 BC. And when I say that, of course, in archaeology is a subject wherein you can get a lot of variations in future. But of course, this is the currently around 50 years of archaeology has gone. That is 5 decades of archaeology has gone, but we have produced very ancient sites in the Haryana region. Pirana is 17,900, close to 8,000 BC. Rakhigarhi is again 6,000 to 4,000 BC, but the priest of the Yajna, which is exactly how the Rama is mentioned in Ramayana, as the person who make a lot of yajnas and give bhuri dakshina or great dakshina doing that. So that way you can actually identify that Rama's chronological position is 10th mandala of the Rigveda, exactly like Shantanu's chronological position is the 10th mandala of Rigveda. And I did go independent of the Rigveda itself, because you have a chronology of Rishi lineage, wherein you have Vasishta and then Shakti, Parashara, and Parashara's son Vyasa, and Vyasa is the grandson of the Pandavas. So if you look at, if you sequence the lineage, if you sequence the generations exactly correctly, both Parashara and Shantanu were husbands for Satyavati.
For
Satyavati, the Matsya lady Satyavati. So Satyavati's two husbands, one is Parashara and one is Shantanu. So they become contemporaries. Parashara and Shantanu become contemporaries. So Parashara's father Shakti is the previous generation, like that.
Yes, but there is a rather obvious problem. If you say that from the early Veda, when Vasishta wrote,
yes,
to the post-Veda, when the Vedas were edited finally by Veda Vyasa, there's only 3 generations. I would say that there are a few dozens of generations.
Yeah.
Because the Vedas takes a long time for getting composed.
Correct. So that some part of it I have addressed in the Mahabharata, wherein because Vyasa is not only the name of an individual, that is, when you say Parashara's son Vyasa, then it becomes person becomes an individual. But otherwise, if you plainly say Vyasa, it could mean anybody who distribute or compose arrange the Vedas. So there could be many people. Of course, I consider as subsequent to the original Vyasa, there could be many people who have compiled the Vedas.
Yeah.
So that way, if you look at Vyasa as, if you are only using the word Vyasa, then it could be many people. But if you use the word Parashara's son Vyasa, for example, in the Mahabharata, when they mentioned Vasishta's great grandson, Shakti's grandson, and Parashara's son Vyasa. So all the generations are mentioned so that the uniqueness is established of that Vyasa. So even independent of Rigveda, that they being contemporary the 10th mandala, we also always get that Shantanu and Rama is contemporary. Because Vasishta is almost like a grandfather for Rama. So automatically Vasishta's son Shakti becomes contemporary to Dasharatha, and Parashara become contemporary to Rama. And as I already mentioned, Parashara and Shantanu are husbands for Satyavati. Automatically Rama and Shantanu become contemporary. This is irrespective of I am using any Rigvedic data.
Yes.
So both combining both Ramayana and Mahabharata, you get contemporaneous of Rama and Shantanu. Rigveda alone also you get contemporaneous of Shantanu and Rama. So there are 2 different independent analyses coming to the same conclusion that Rama and Shantanu are contemporaries.
Right. Well, before continuing or returning to the link from Veda to Mahabharata, let's first focus on the really special message you have about the Ramayana.
Yeah.
So your book has been noticed by quite a few traditionalists who would have preferred you never written it, because you think some very unorthodox things about the geography of Rama's journey to Lanka.
Yeah, yes.
So how do you see this?
Yeah, yes. So for example, when I started writing the book on the Ramayana geography, I have an open mind. I have not decided on any conclusion. And I was trying verse by verse, that is sloka by sloka, I was trying to see how Rama reached Sri Lanka. Even that was my objective, to make Rama reach Sri Lanka. Just like solving a puzzle, I tried to make Rama reach Sri Lanka. So I was looking at the Ayodhya Kanda, the Bala Kanda and Ayodhya Kanda slokas, and I very correctly get Rama starting from Ayodhya and then crossing the very, very clear. Today also the river names are almost same. So there is a local Tamasa river which is to the south of Ayodhya. Rama crosses the local Tamasa river. He sleeps there for some time and then moves little downwards, and he crosses this Gomati river and then Syandiga river, which is a boundary of like Kosala and Kashi kingdoms. Kashi is to the south, Kosala is to the north. So Syandiga river, which is flowing between Gomati and Ganga, is separating the 2 kingdoms. So he crossed that. Everything is correct. I don't have to do any hair splitting. Directly look at the map, I can see it as rivers. And then he reaches Sringiverapura of the Nishada. That is again exactly, the name is not even changed, it is there. And then he crossed Ganga and reached Bharadwaja Ashrama, which is in Prayaga. No difference at all. And then Bharadwaja mentions about the Yojana distance from the Prayaga to Chitrakuta. Again, including the Yojana distance, the location of Chitrakuta, everything is correct. So till Chitrakuta, I don't have any problem. And after that, there is an Atriya Asrama, which is just very few kilometers from Chitrakuta, and then he enters the Dandakaranya. From there onwards, the whatever Ramayana is mentioning and whatever beliefs in the tradition are seeing in offset. Because in the tradition, the Dandakaranya is believed as in the much more southward into the Chhattisgarh, like Chhattisgarh state of India, that is central India. But in the Ramayana, you can see immediately after the Atri Asrama, which is only a few kilometers away from Chitrakuta, Dandakaranya starts. So Dandakaranya starting itself, tradition as well as the actual reading of Ramayana is different. It is much more northern in the Dandakaranya positioning. Location of Dandakaranya is much more northern. And then from there onwards, because I have established the yojana distance based on whatever Bharadwaja mentioned. Because Bharadwaja mentioned from Prayaga to Chitrakuta, the distance is this much. So from that you get exact what is the exact value of yojana in terms of kilometers. And in the Ramayana you have two types of yojanas. One is for measuring dimensions like width, length and breadth, height of mountains, etc., which is only 120 meters in length.
Yeah.
And this other yojana, which is measuring distances, is 48 kilometers in length actually. Because it is mentioned about 10 yojana, so 10 krosha between this Chitrakuta and Prayag. So that translate 10 krosha translate to some 12 kilometer from krosha. And it is same distance is mentioned as 3.5 yojanas. So that gives an exact value of 48 kilometer for a yojana. So I have already decided that I will use only the yojana which is compatible with Ramayana data for further use of the same yojana distance. So using that methodology, I have, of course, some of them are given by tradition. Like after the reaching Dandakaranya, Rama kills a Rakshasa called Viratha. And Viratha Kund is already established by the tradition, and the distance, everything matches, so I accept it. Then Sudikshna Asrama or Sharabanga Asrama, two Rishi Asramas, Sharabanga and Sudikshna are there. That is available in tradition and not much variation. Everything agrees with whatever distances which I have got using the calculations. The derived yojana distance, everything matches perfectly. And the last point, Sudikshna is asking Rama to go to many rishis. Like he wanted to spend the entire 14 years. So he said, you can stay in one rishi house for 6 months, another for 1 year. Like that, you can go to all the rishis and then come back. Last, you come back to me, like that he mentioned. So he goes, and that rishi mandalas, rishis are ashramas are spread across like a circuit. And I have found that when I look at the map, I can find there is a river that is flows through the middle of the Dandakaranya, and that is a Tamasa river. Taunts, it is mentioned as Taunts or Satna river, etc. So along that river, if you look at the current map, the source of the river, you can see Sudikshna Asrama, the first asrama that Rama meets. And to the end of that river, that is, its river joins Ganga, you can see Valmiki Asrama there. They are maintaining Valmiki Asrama is on the confluence of Ganga and this particular river. And its source, which is not very well known to many people, it is originated from the close to Sudikshna Asrama. So all the other asramas are actually along the river, this Dandakaranya river called Tamasa river. So that very clarity I have got. So Rama actually goes through all these rishis, which means implicitly he also visited Valmiki Asrama, which is silent, which is not mentioned in the like Ramayana, but only in Uttarakhanda it becomes clear, where Rama asks Sita to, Sita wishes to go to and see all the rishis she has lived with during his forest life. And that Rama that time mentioned, okay, I will send you to Valmiki Asrama in the confluence of Ganga and Tamasa river, which is confusing to any other reader of Ramayana, because never in Ramayana there is any mention of them staying in Valmiki Asrama. But when in my geography it becomes clear that in this particular circuit, Asrama Mandala, one of the asrama was Valmiki Asrama. Perhaps Valmiki is the author of the Ramayana. He avoided mentioning that because some reason. But in the geography you can see it. And then after going through all these asramas, they came back, as promised, they came back to Sudikshna Asrama. At that time, Rama asked, I want to see Vasishtha Asrama, Agastya Asrama. So that is in little bit south.
Yeah.
So he said, okay, I give you the direction. It is in this much yojanas, you give Vasishtha's brother's asrama. Then after some more yojanas, you reach Agastya's asrama. Like that. So he goes. So this Agastya asrama is the only asrama which is not part of the asrama mandala. Every other asrama is on this particular river. This asrama is on the northern foothills of the Vindhya mountains, which is the current situation, because Agastya rishis are the ones who cross the Vindhya and go on to the other side of India and then reached as far as Tamil Nadu. But that current during the contemporary Rama period, he was there in that northern foothills of Vindhya mountains, and that is where the tradition locates it. It's not my identification, tradition identified. From there, was Agastya says, when he asks for an asrama to leave, Agastya says, go to north, and then you will find an like location where you can called Panchavadi, where you can actually establish an asrama. So this part, a lot of traditionalists ignore this north, go north. Like from Agastya asrama, Rama is directed to go northwards. Whatever they do is ignore this verse, this sloka. They just imagine that it is Nasik, and they will take them to the Nasik actually. In fact, there is a two competing tradition. Maybe 80% of the believe Panchavadi is Nasik. There are 20% who believes Panchavadi is in Bhadrajalam in Andhra Pradesh. So they are conflicting, but both of them are not true. And the conflict also is the reason because tradition don't know where it is. So they have identified one in Nasik, another in the Bhadrajalam. Similarly, Kishkinda, there are two competing traditions. One is Hampi in Karnataka, and exactly like that Tirumala Hills in Andhra Pradesh. So both Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh are competing for both Panchavadi and Kishkinda, which most of the people don't know. And this ambiguity coming because neither of them are the real locations.
Right.
And they have ignored this northward motion.
So, the end of your story is that Lanka is not Sri Lanka.
Yeah, yes. So, then that is again, I am not alone as a researcher who says the Lanka is not Sri Lanka. Because even if I ignore my location of Kishkinda or Panchavadi, Ramayana clearly mentioned Hanuman traveling from the ocean shore towards south, straight like a rocket to the south. That is what is mentioned. And I was frantically looking at one sloka where it says Hanuman turned eastwards. It's not there. So because of that, it is straight southward direction motion. And if you look at from Indian mainland, there is no way you go travel southward and reach Sri Lanka. That entire geography where the tradition thinks is from Rameshwaram, from west to east towards Sri Lanka. So that because of that, even one of my competitor, Nilesh Hawk, doesn't think Sri Lanka is Lanka. Because he has seen that sloka, that Hanuman is moving southwards. Of course, he identified with Antarctica and all, but that is a different story. But actually, he understands that Hanuman's motion is to the south, southwards, like that.
So if there is far more commonality than we thought when we located Ramayana rather far to the east and Mahabharata to the west, there is far more commonality between them. Both of them are in fact in the line of the Rigveda.
Yes.
Then how far distant are the two epics from one another? I mean, usually it is assumed that there is a long time loss between them. Like people who believe in the yoga theory say that Krishna defined the end of the Dwapara Yuga, the second last age, and Rama is often called Tretaka Thakur, the landlord of the second age, and so you have practically the whole Dwapara Yuga in between them. Now, traditionalists would say, well, Kali Yuga is 432,000 years. Dwapara is twice as much. So if that age was between them, then Rama is like 900,000 years older. And so that they had absolutely nothing in common. Rama lived in a completely different society. And, from what you tell me here, this is not the case at all.
Yes. Yeah, so I have to start with whatever hardcore or real evidence that is getting from the Mahabharata. where there is a very practical use of the Panchavarsha Yuga, the 5-year long Yuga for the real life of the Pandavas. There is an incident where the Pandavas completed the 12 years forest life and the 1 year incognito life Ajnatavas, and then there was a fight between the Matsya and the Trigarta Kuru army in the Matsya territory, and then in that fight the Drona and Duryodhana and Bhishma, they recognized Arjuna fighting against them, and then Duryodhana said, I have now found out Arjuna. I know this is Arjuna, so the Pandavas are discovered, and I don't think they have completed the 13 years, and that is they have promised. Then Bhishma said, I am calculating. I calculate that in the every 5 years there is 2 months to be added. So in 13 years there are 4 months to be added, and then there is 3 more years. For that there is some residue days. Pandavas completed all the 13 years of this lunar months, lunar years, as well as the 4 Athimasas and the additional days. So they have completed the 13 years in all respect. So that is a very clear example that the Pandava time, the Yuga duration was 5 years.
Yeah.
And then for 4 such Yugas form 20 years. And this 20 years is very special because it is also part of the Saturn-Jupiter cycles. The smallest cycle where the Saturn and Jupiter conjunct in any sign is 20 years. And then subsequently the cycle goes to 60 years, etc., like that, to 120 years or 1200 years, 12,000 years, etc., that it goes in a series. So what happens is that somewhere between the lifetime of the Pandavas to the lifetime of Aryabhatta, there was a continuous or progressive expansion of the cycles. So at some point of time, the 20-year Yuga, you started connecting with the 60-year Saturn-Jupiter cycle, 120-year Saturn-Jupiter cycle, 1200 years and 12,000 years. And the last stage, which is again recorded in the older parts of the Mahabharata in the Shanti Parva, where they define the 12,000 years as 12,000 years of the Devas, and 1 year they again use the solar year of 360 days as a footprint of an ancient period. So instead of multiplying it with 365, they are multiplying that with 360 and saying 12,000 into 360. It is coming up 42 lakh 20,000 years as the Chatur Yuga. 4 Yugas are 42,020, and this 42 lakhs 20,000 Chatur Yuga is popularized during the period of Aryabhatta. And there was a kind of maybe unknown or intentional mapping, back projection of these Yugas onto the lifetime of Pandavas and Rama. And of course, the Rama, somehow the tradition is aware that Rama is older than the Pandavas. That is why they have a temptation to connect Rama with the Treta Yuga, which is an older Yuga, and the Pandavas with the Dwapara Yuga, which is a younger Yuga. So they knows, in maybe tacitly or inherently, they have a imprint in their memory that Rama is older. And there is another thing, Ikshvakus as a lineage have a more older history than the Aila lineage because of their expansion. So in the reverse of Rigveda, I argue that whatever sequence in which the Bharatas migrated in from east to west direction, it has happened, the same thing has happened for the Ikshvaku lineage, little more earlier period, like 3000 BC, older than 3000 BC it has happened. So wherever they found Ikshvakus, the Trikshis, they were already there, and their migration happened 1000 years older, 1000 or maybe 1000 or 2000 years older than the Bharatas migrated to those places. So because of that, there is a memory also then that Ikshvaku lineage is older. That kind of, or people of Ikshvaku lineage may be older. So all these things create an impression, or so that when the Yuga system is properly defined, like instead of dividing it into 1:1:1:1 ratio equal, following the ratio 1:2:3:3, that ratio, that they have divided the Yugas. Again inspired by the Dyuta of Pandavas, where they have used a dice. Currently the dice is 6-faced, but that time it is 4-faced dice. And in the 4 phases you mark the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. And they were given the name like Kali, Dwapara, Treta and Krita. So from there, that inspiration that also influenced the dividing of the yugas into 1:3:4 like that. And all these things combined, that yuga duration from 20 Chatur Yuga from 20 years to 43 lakh 20,000, and even ratio also changed from like equal ratio to that Dyuda kind of ratio.
2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then this happened.
Now, apart from these astro-literary data that lend themselves to very fanciful speculation, are there any hard data in the outside world, like archaeology or like geology about the rivers, that can make this dating more precise and more secure?
Yes. Yeah. So what is this? The main reason, like one main inhibitor for any chronology research in Bharatiya text is kind of misunderstanding of the 4 yugas, the astronomical yuga. Second, how I look at it is because both the Ramayana and Mahabharata mention similar kind of chariots, similar kind of cities, buildings, roads. Everything is similar. The weapons used is sometimes, most of the times it is bronze, sometimes it is mentioned as iron. Naracha is a special weapon which is iron arrow. So many things connected with Bronze Age and Iron Age. And Bronze Age in India is currently pegged at 3300 BC and onwards. And Iron Age from 2000 BC onwards. And archaeologists no more talk about a worldwide Bronze Age or Iron Age. So it depends upon the country to country. So in India, it is 3300 BC onwards Bronze Age and 2000 BC onwards Iron Age, which is upgraded from 1200 BC during the BB Lal period. So currently it is 2000 BC, and so when I look at this is the kind of time bracket right? For both the itihasas, irrespective of whatever tradition put yugas etc., it cannot go beyond 2000 BC for both Rama and the Pandavas. So there is an upper limit. Even otherwise, there is a Rama Jataka which has misled many people to date. Like in the Kurukshetra war, as well as both in the Mahabharata and Ramayana, there is enough astronomical information so that you can create a kind of a signature of the planetary position, and then use the planetarium software to recreate that planetary position and then arrive at a date. So that is available for both Mahabharata and Ramayana. But unfortunately for Ramayana, the Rama Jataka, which allows us to date Rama to 5114 BC, Saroja Bala's dating, that entire verse is excised in the critical edition of Ramayana, which means that this entire Jataka portion is very late, like something like 4th century CE, after the Bhaskara, all these people. So it is later to Yavana Jataka, from where this Jataka creation process, everything started by a fusion of the Greek as well as Indian astronomy. That Jataka concept came in Indian astrology. And after Jataka concept came and it became popular only in 4th century CE. So after that, this Rama Jataka is created. And because of the same reason, because the critical edition creators look at all the verses. So in many of the different variations of Ramayana, you don't see the Rama Jataka. And then you can find it is a later edition, and they have excised it. So when you are dating Rama at 5114 BC, like Saroja Bala has done, they are using an older information. It is not really original, really ancient. So there is only way you can date Rama is by using Kurukshetra war.
Yeah.
Because you have, of course, Kurukshetra war, there are multiple dates. And of course, I am personally backing one of the date which is level lower than 2000 BC. Of course, anything between 2000 and 1500 BC are very good candidates. But with various other reasons, 1793 BC of Ashok Bhatnagar I am currently backing with available archaeological and astronomical information. So if you know the Kurukshetra war date, assume that it is 1793 BC, you know that Parikshit is born 1 year after the Kurukshetra war. So he is like an anchor in terms of lineage. He is the anchor for Kurukshetra war. From there you subtract the generations, Abhimanyu, Arjuna, Pandu, Vichitravirya, and Shantanu. You reach Shantanu, that is the same date for Rama. So like that I back calculated from Kurukshetra war, and it is coming around 1940 BC for Rama's date. And again it is aligning with the archaeology, as well as the chariot discovery which is happening all over the world, not only in India, because many of the chronologists blame the Indian archaeologists, ISI, for not doing enough for dating chariots, Ayodhya, etc., beyond 2000 BC. So it is anywhere in the world,
Yes.
even in Mesopotamian, Chinese, Egyptian. Nowhere there is a chariot driven by war horses older than 2200 BC.
Mhm.
I'm just adding 200 years more, but it's actually 2000 BC, and nothing is obtained.
Right. So the result is that both epics are to be dated in the first half of the second millennium BC.
Yes.
And I have the impression that many traditionalists are not going to like this, so you are clearly going to create some kind of sensation in Hindu circles, and yet your approach is not at all anti-Hindu. It's simply faithful to what Hindus themselves, only those of thousands of years ago, have written. Okay, very interesting. Meanwhile, now that you have done this great and very decisive work, I assume that you have waken up one day well rested after this big work and have started thinking about future projects.
Yeah, yes.
Maybe you can tell us.
Yes. So I have already completed writing of the geography of Mahabharata, which is the third in the geochronological trilogy. So that's almost done. So I am free from that hard work. And the book is with the publisher, and it comes to release with everything hopefully correct by January. That is few weeks from now. In January it will be released. And currently I am burdened with writing a book on the whatever I have left out when I was focusing on the materialism of the chronology and geochronology, because the philosophical aspect is something that I handle always, but it is only in the last 5 years I have focused on the materialistic aspect of Rigveda, Ramayana and Mahabharata, because nobody will put their hands dirty in that. So now that I completed it, I will come back to the philosophical aspect. So, of course, in the Ramayana and Mahabharata, there are numerous verses which are focused on Sanatana Dharma, which is on the various topics of Dharma. And if I look at, there are so many texts written on, books written on Manusmriti, etc. But I can see the same verses verbatim in the Mahabharata as well. So, many of the Dharma Shastras and many texts which are independently mentioned as Dharma Shastras, 80% of that is available in the Mahabharata, Shanti Parva and Anushasana Parva. So I am analyzing that, and also many other concepts I have talked about in terms of YouTube videos for various universities like Indus University and Sangam, which is on the Dharma and science, how the science is something which is a kind of I would say younger brother of the Dharma itself, because they are having similar natures. And in terms, if you put three things in the Abrahamic religion, science and Sanatana Dharma into a list, then there is some affinity between Sanatana Dharma and science, and Abrahamism little apart, because there are certain principles which is like open-ended inquiry, etc. There are there both in the. So I am using that kind of concepts and trying to make a bridge between the people who are following science and people who are traditionalist, or people who focus on the tradition, and having kind of developed some kind of animosity to the science, thinking that it is contaminated by Abrahamism or something like that. So I have to, my main objective is remove that science is science, and if somebody handled it in the past, like some Jesuit missionaries handled it in the past, doesn't turn it into an Abrahamic thing. So and it's I am trying to going to the first principles like Rita, and from there deriving because Rita is basically is the concept in Rigveda, which is predating the concept of Dharma, and there you can see rudimentary elements of scientific inquiry, and everything related to cyclicity, like cyclic order of the seasons. From there, that concept has emerged, and they started seeing Rita in the motion of the planets. So even inside the Rita concept, there is astronomy, there is ecology, or science of natural science, everything is embedded into that. It's a seed of science itself. So from there, science is born. And of course, Rita, that is order in the cosmos. When it comes to human life, it becomes dharma, wherein people have to follow certain order, certain like behavior. That becomes dharma. So both dharma and science have Rita as the mother. So that concept I'm bringing in. And then other part of the book is about how you use technology, which is a derivative of science, for the advancement of Sanatana Dharma. With some of my initiative itself, like Dharma Digital, where I use the latest technology like this hologram, augmented reality holograms to bring in the avatars. So you have in our Puranas, we always say Mahavishnu, Pratyaksha ho gaya. I mean, something like that they will. But now you can actually make it happen.
So a hologram, which is what the Atharva Veda calls Indra's.
Yeah, yes. Correct. And I also figured out in the Mahabharata, Krishna does this Vishwarupa. And there is a very interesting concept. The Vishwarupa, the poet described that in the body of Krishna, the Vishnu, Brahma, Shiva, all of them appear like light. And they are few angula, means angula matra, that is length of a finger. That is hologram that I usually make. So Krishna has created a hologram of Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma, and then Devatas, and then all the Pandavas, everybody on her in his body. The hologram, basically. Yeah.
Okay, well, we have that book to look forward to, but meanwhile, you have given us enough to read about the history of the Veda, the Ramayana, and the Mahabharata.
Yeah.
So we'll be busy with that, not just reading it, but especially discussing it. And the future is bright, at least for reading people and debating people. So thanks a lot. Thanks for this conversation also.
Thank you.
And we'll meet again after your next.
Thank you, Dr. S.